Yes, sir. Should we do it?
Shall we?
Shall we?
Let's kick this thing off. What?
We're getting started in about 2 minutes. Everybody? How many minutes? I say 2. Yeah. It won't be long.
Sound like you said something. It sound like you said something.
Oh, it went right up here.
Oh, thank you.
A little chilly in here?
Yeah, I might need a sheer blanket. Do you have any of those?
No problem. Let's see. Where did I leave it? One for you, one for you. This feels like summer to me. We're getting, I wonder what I gotta look now. We've been in the minus degrees where I live. Yeah, Cheyenne, which is 10 degrees colder usually than Denver. Yep. Well, it's not too bad. It's warm enough. It's 23 degrees, but we're supposed to get 26 inches of snow today.
How many inches?
26. But what's better is the wind. The wind is expected to hit, it's very windy. The wind is expected to hit 60 miles an hour and with gusts up to 100 miles an hour. That's hurricane force winds. So guess what that does to 26 inches of snow? 6 and 7 foot drifts in certain places, yeah.
Bury your house.
That's right, yeah.
So you're spending the week here, right?
My clothes are already at the launder, yeah. I think we're all about back together here. Dang it, there was something that we talked about on break. What were we talking about that I said we should talk about before we get on with it? I don't remember. Yeah. Important stuff like Peru. Yeah. All right, well, we'll just get on with it here, and please jump in again wherever you see fit. Need to just make sure you activate your microphone so we can all hear you. We're going to do a deeper dive now on Microflex Complete. So more on the technical side. Before we start, by the way, of the reps in the room, who has been through the sales enablement training? Sales enablement training? Nobody? How about technical enablement training? Okay. So now's a good time to tell you all we have enablement trainings. These are part of Sure's SAI course, Sure Audio Institute. We have a whole group that puts together trainings online, and you can sign up for that if you wish, if you're a dealer. Certainly we'd love you to do that, because the smarter you are about our products, the better we can all work together. There are 2 quote-unquote enablement trainings for this product. There's a sales enablement training meant for those who might be selling the product that don't need to know the deep dive. That's a very pleasant, easy thing to get through. It's little chunks of 5-minute video kind of thing. And then we have a technical enablement that really kind of goes into deep stuff. And then you can also attend an in-person training that tags on the end of that training. So what we're doing today is somewhere in between. We're going deeper than the sales side, but we're also not going as deep as this technical enablement side. So with that, where the heck does this name come from? Microflex Complete. What's that all about? The idea is that this is a continuation of our Microflex line, which is a well-established and used product throughout the industry. It's depended upon, and we love it, right? Microflex microphones. Complete literally means it's an audio solution for managed meetings, discussions, fulfilling requirements for speaking and listening and all these other things for all participant roles. So meaning this system utilizes all of those facilities, whether it's microphones, loudspeakers, touch screens, you know, it's everything all in one. That's the idea. And it's an integrated audio system, of course, for conferences, meetings, as we've been discussing already. It replaces conference units and gooseneck microphones that were the old 6000 series. Some of this is going to be review, guys. It is backwards compatible, though. This is an important thing. It is backwards compatible with Software 6000, with DCS 6000, which is the older product, which is kind of cool because it allows you, there's my mouse. Come on, mouse. There we go. It does allow you to install new units where an existing system has already been installed. It's especially useful if these guys don't want to rip out the entire system. They say, it's working just fine. We just need to add some units. Great, no problem, we can do that. Okay. The key use cases here in target environments, if it's not already obvious, is really when it comes to managed or structured meetings. This is certainly in government, corporate, educational markets, etc. And there's multilingual meetings as well. We've talked a little bit about that. Making sure I'm saying everything I'm supposed to here. Meetings in large spaces and flexible spaces, certainly. Requiring efficient cable structure. So having just one Cat5 or maybe two, if we're doing a redundant loop, could be very beneficial for some of these places, especially in the South. I lived in North Carolina for a while and tried to do work in some of these buildings that were built in the late 1800s, and guess what? Getting wires around there is a pain in the you-know-what. So less wire is good. Certainly building with restrictions on component installations too. So where placing loudspeakers in ceilings and walls and things might be restricted. And so if it hasn't been said yet already, there is no other audio system that we're listening to. Everything we're experiencing today is just this system. And at its core, what it's supposed to do is increase intelligibility because it gets every microphone closer to the talker and every loudspeaker closer to the listener. That's like Physics 101 when it comes to acoustics, right? We can get away with this kind of system in any environment, whereas if we're putting in some big, large, meeting in a gym or something like that, trying to put PA on a stick, we all kind of know that there's challenges with that, right? Yeah. Okay, so quick look at the different roles here. We've got a participant role, so all people talking are an active part of the meeting. This is a participant. The delegate is either present in person or connected remotely and has special rights like assigned speech time and voting. We saw that kind of stuff up here in the CDA in our mock council meeting. The chairperson can lead a meeting. And also then, of course, we have the interpreter, who usually sits in an acoustically isolated space. If you're not familiar with this, is something I had to learn about. Certainly in these spaces all around the globe, some countries have multiple languages that are native languages within that one country. So an interpreter booth, we saw the hardware, but they actually build isolated booths for the interpreters to sit in, and there'd be one language that happens in that booth. There could be multiple interpreters that take turns because these people are prima donnas, apparently, and they can only work for about 15 minutes at a time. The truth is, it's really hard to listen in real time and translate in real time. So typically in these booths, you might have 2, 3, 4 units set up, and that's just for one language. An interpreter works for about 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then the next one takes over, and so on and so forth. They're in an isolated booth because they don't want to have audio bleed from either the floor or from interpreters that are next to them speaking a different language. So that's the idea behind that. Certainly, the secretary plays a role here. That's just someone that might assist the chairperson or the mayor or whatever, maybe VIPs also handling administrative type work. And then a technician. This could also be an IT person and whatnot. The technician could be someone sitting at the back of the room having a mimic or seeing the request to display, request to speak display, and helping and assisting moving that meeting along. Finally, also there could be a systems IT administrator. We all know what those guys do, hopefully by now, yeah? Okay. So the full functionality requirements, these key features include single cable, we talked about daisy chaining. It is that DCS LAN with the proprietary protocol for power, audio, digital data signals. If it wasn't said earlier, that is a proprietary protocol. It's not Dante. It's not something else you can break the cables apart and steal off of. It is a encrypted audio feed with power that happens over that bus, that protocol. It allows conferences with up to 3,800 participants, and of course 31 translation languages. We've been over this. Make sure I'm covering everything. Microflex goosenecks, all different options. And we talked about the fact that there's dual flex and single flex, right? The dual flex literally flexes here and at the bottom. Some of you have single flex in front of you where there is no goose at the very top, only at the bottom, okay? We do have identifications, NFC cards supported via third-party programmers. So, Michael, can you grab that NFC card reader? We talked about the cards themselves, and at this point, you're going to need to buy the card from Shure. You're not going to get one that looks like this. You're going to get a white card that looks more like this. This happens to be a dual. It has a chip in it. It also has an antenna in it for NFC. So you might remember that there are chip card functionality. That is not how this system works. The old 6000 system worked with a chip card. The new system works with the near field technology, with there's just a built-in antenna. You'll notice on this, it's not like this. So anyway, you would buy these things from Shure. And the reason for that, I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole. The reason for that is that, like many things, some of these things meet spec and some of them do not. And the last thing we need to be doing is helping you figure out your card that you bought is the wrong thing. I think we even have examples of the same part number being changed. Excuse me, the build of a card that has the same part number, but it's a different build, if you follow what I'm saying. So it was fine, and then all of a sudden it stopped meeting spec because they changed something within. So, went way down the rabbit hole on that. The reality is, buy these from Shure, and they'll work. But you can buy this thing from Amazon for, there you go, 30 bucks. And with a little, you plug this in your computer, and you can use an app to program the cards with. You can put data and information on it. I think there was a question earlier about, are we going to cover NFC cards? I don't know if now is the right time to do it or not. Are there any questions other than what I've answered about NFC?
Can we buy the cards with any other HID or MyFair capabilities baked in?
As in using your cards that you already have existing in your system?
Not that they're already existing, but being able to combine capabilities. Yeah, I'm on the gooseneck. So, like all of our access control right now is dual between HID and MyFair, with the rollout of MyFair being the end-all be-all for our access control and identity management.
So to
Can you speak into a mic?
Yeah,
please?
can you talk into a microphone?
The short answer is more than likely yes. We would need to do a little bit of digging with your IT security folks and probably our product development team. The card is an ACOS 3 card. There's 3 different models that they manufacture. This is one of the specific model numbers, so we would just simply need to make sure whatever specifications that are specific to this ACOS 3 card meets or matches what you have for your employees.
I think
It's not
part of,
ruled out. It has been asked before, but we haven't. There's not a definitive yes or no because of everybody's different technology that's put on that card.
and I think part of it too is there space on that card to write what we need to write for our stuff to identify it as ours. Yeah.
Yeah, the concept there being able to issue one card citywide, and
Yeah.
that works everywhere, including with the NFCs.
We can't promise anything, but the more we hear that kind of communication, the easier our job becomes in relaying back to
Well-
the engineers and product guys. So
Here's-
thank you for that.
Here's 40,000 reasons.
There you go. All right. The sign, which we've kind of talked about a little bit here. The MXC sign is really cool. I mentioned there's applications for this thing even on its own, and we've sold systems so far that are only name sign systems. They have an existing conference system, whether it's ours or somebody else's, and they just want to add these signs, whether they need to be portable and programmed and brought in, or they're installed and part of the system. Here we go.
Is there a sign going to be integrated with any of the delegate systems?
Like one piece of hardware?
Yeah, so one delegate system with the name already embedded in it. Or in other terms, I want this thing to have an e-ink sign displaying to the public.
Right. There's nothing at this point that I know of that we're working on, but that's an interesting point. Got it. The DCS LAN redundancy loop through here. This is, well, first of all, I guess Braille overlays, you might have noticed already, inherent to the system, there's Braille overlays for those that are visually impaired. And then the conference units also allow redundant loop cable topology by using what we call the McRib. Actually, that's not really what it's called. It's the MXC ACC RIB. Essentially what this thing is kind of a gender bender and allows us to create a loop so that no matter what happens in the chain, we still maintain connectivity unless it's just a bad unit. And it also allows us to troubleshoot a lot easier and find exactly where in the chain something has went bad. Larger system diagrams is kind of stuff we've already went over. Certainly mix of any type of unit, including name signs. We've got 4 chains on the CCU itself. We need a network switch and go out to our control systems, our web browser interface, or the software 6000, and then, of course, analog audio in and out for whatever it is we need to do there. On the hardware, we've talked about software 6000 and that it's optional. You don't have to have it, but certainly it gives you additional functionality. The hardware is scalable itself by adding FL, right, feature licenses, and all this stuff is upgradable through firmware or through software 6000 as well. And so it boils down to 4 different ways to operate the system. Standalone, standalone with browser interface. So literally we mean standalone, we mean a technician shows up on site with a CCU and the conference units, and they plug it all together and they turn it on. So there is minimal control right on the front panel of the CCU. They can do minimal setup, basic setup of the system. If you wanted to add browser functionality, great. Add a laptop or some type of PC with a screen, browse into the browser, and control it that way. You can add Software 6000, of course, which we've talked a little bit about, or via third-party control system. Okay. There's 4 different ways to operate the microphones as well, and that is in manual mode, automatic mode, first in, first out, and Vox. So basically in, what's the best way to describe these here? If we say, most of these systems, let me just put it this way, most of these systems should probably be operating in automatic mode. And automatic in the US doesn't mean the same thing as automatic elsewhere, apparently. Automatic means you automatically pick your finger up and you push the button, and your microphone automatically turns on. Okay? And then you push it again and your microphone turns off. This is the best way really to have a good structured meeting and for the system to operate in the best scenario. Okay. First in, first out is kind of, it is just what it says. As soon as we all could turn our mics on, and the second I turn mine off, the next one turns on, and so on and so forth, right down the line. Vox mode was built, I think, for the American market because we're lazy. We don't want to automatically pick up our fingers and have the microphone automatically turn on. We just like to talk and have it activate. This is actually kind of a cool mode to be in. However, this is not a structured meeting mode at all, right? Structured meetings, you want to require somebody to do something, to have an action in order to maintain control of the meeting. So Vox mode is kind of neat for high school parent councils, or even at higher ed, where they just need to have a basic discussion system, and anyone can talk at any given time. That's fine. Vox mode will allow different mics to turn on and off, and up to 8 total, even though we always recommend keeping that number of microphones as low as possible, probably around 3 or 4. But the challenge with Vox mode, just as you might already be suspecting, is what if I start having a sidebar conversation with somebody next to me? The microphone doesn't know that you don't want it to listen to that. So long and short of these modes is we recommend you always consider using automatic mode so that there's an action required. I turn my mic on, and now I can talk, or at least go into a request to speak mode. Okay? And we've probably discussed plenty about goosenecks at this point. Maybe we haven't talked about the different part numbers for the shotguns. Let's discuss that real quick. The shotguns that most of you see, the mini shotguns on most of your units there, that is a part number. It is either a GM406 MS, which is a mini shotgun. The GM indicates that it works with the 5900 system. MXC 406 MS is the shotgun that works in these units, okay? That 406 indicates the length, 6 inches. Now, the cool thing is if you're a Shure fan, you know that you can interchange all of our capsules with each other. The shotgun is the same example. So you can buy just the mini shotgun capsule, and you could put it on any gooseneck you want. That's what we have over here at the public response lectern. So we were able to put it on, it looks like a 16-inch-ish gooseneck there. Okay?
Quick question about the bi-color LED.
Yes.
I think, didn't we see blue? And
It's-
like when I unplugged, there was yellow too.
It's tricolor LED, actually, yeah. And so currently your options are to have this activate as red, which is popular everywhere else in the world. In the US, green means go and red means mute. So we could flip all of this and have it operate the other way. Ideally, eventually, we're going to give you more options for different colors for activation. Yeah. Bicolor. It says bicolor right there. We got to fix some things. Sorry.
Well, I'm not allowed to have red on my campus.
Not allowed to have red on what?
On my campus.
Oh, yeah. Let's see, is it magenta? No, what color is it?
It's that Green Bay logo that has that weird color.
All right, so the MXC 615 and 620 portable conference units, these can operate, as we've already discussed, in chairman, delegate, or dual delegate mode. The dual delegate mode will not yet be available at launch. It's coming, so that'll be in a firmware update. There are 2 channel selectors on either side, so you guys have some of these sitting around close to you. You'll notice that there's those 2 windows up front, and then there's 2 rocker switches on either side of the unit. What you're doing is you're selecting a language or a channel that comes back. Remember, we can have up to 4, 8, 16, or 31 different languages, and by moving the selector switch, you're selecting a different channel that's coming back or language. The other rocker switch allows you to change the volume up and down. There's one on either side because you may have someone in one language on one side, and on the other, sitting on the other side of the unit, you might be listening to a different language. Okay? It also, though, again, applying it to the American market, guys like me need to just plug some headphones in once in a while so I can hear better. Because everyone's talking softer these days, I swear. It also has Braille overlays, so we know about that. And, yep, there's a headphone jack, Braille overlays. NFC card on the 620 only. This is really the only defining difference between a 615 and a 620, is being able to do NFC cards there. Okay. There's 3 different modes on the 615 and 620. We already discussed chairman, and that you can get that package of buttons because the buttons are replaceable. There's a programmable button to the left. It's the ... button. That can be all delegates off. It could be mute all or next on. So while the touchscreen offers the most functionality, even the 615 and 620 can be a chairman unit, and you can replace those buttons with something that's more relevant to what they need from a chairperson perspective, and still keep it simple, right?
What's the difference in map?
The difference in what?
In map pricing between the touchscreen versus non-touch?
We got a slide coming up on that. Remind me when we get there.
Okay.
So that's a 3-button package. There's also a Speak AB package that contains 10 buttons that are labeled Speak A and 10 buttons labeled Speak B. And then finally, there'll be a package for mute and reply. Each of those contain 10 identical buttons. Quite honestly, that one, there is a mode of operation in meetings sometimes where, let's say there's a long list of people that need to reply to speak. You go into the queue, you start talking, and when you stop, you can actually reply again. So if somebody else makes another comment that you feel like you need to reply to, there could be another, you can enter into like a second reply queue, basically is what it is. Sometimes I listen to this stuff and I'm like, thank God we don't do that kind of stuff here in the U.S. At least I haven't seen it yet. But these meetings can become very, very technically advanced, I guess, in how they operate. Okay. The MXC 630 also can operate as it adds voting capabilities, and it can be configured as a single user by a chairperson or delegate. So I got to remember to come back to, no, let's just do it now. Why not? Stop, hang on. Earlier I was talking about the ability to add a feature license that takes you beyond the 250 unit max, right? We'd go to 251. Can you think of an instance where I'm not talking about 250 units that I need to add that feature license? We've talked about a scenario about one unit can operate as what? Dual delegate. So in that scenario, that's two participants. One unit, but two participants. So I've sucked up 2 seats off of one unit in dual delegate mode. So in that case, if I'm running a meeting with 125 units, all in dual delegate mode, and I need to add 126, I now need to add that feature license to take me beyond 250. Does that make sense?
Do the signs count as a unit
Do the signs count as a unit? No.
on that 250 count?
No.
Okay, cool.
Okay, we got 5 backlit voting buttons, and these can be for a range of voting, whether it's a 5-button vote or a 3-button vote. You can make the decision. And of course, the language display selector, just like the 620 we went through. And there are 2 different connections for 3.5 millimeter jacks for headphones. The Braille also is included on the speak and function button. And then participants can identify themselves as well with NFC cards on these guys. The 640 with the touchscreen display can be configured in 3 different modes. That's chairperson, delegate, or dual delegate. The dual delegate mode will not be available at launch, but it's coming very soon. The main user interface is that 4.3 touchscreen. It's color. I think they've done a pretty good job getting that thing together. Works really well. There we go. 2 interpretation channels on this one, both with 3.5 millimeter jacks. Integrated Braille here as well. And then participant ID via NFC card. This is something that we may have missed when we started the meeting. In fact, I think we did. When all of you sat down in front of or there was a 640 sitting next to you, this is probably the screen that looks somewhat similar to this. You may have needed to, quote unquote, log into it or touch the screen to get into the rest of the meeting and see voting results or being able to vote, that kind of thing. But this is the user interface. Hardware-related views and or controls of can be done here. So, for instance, speak and request lists, voting procedure, including attendance check. We didn't see the attendance check because it wasn't part of our meeting necessarily, but you can show that here. You can start and stop voting, as well as view the voting results. Did any of you see this on your screens when we were voting? No. That's because you guys weren't supposed to be voting on pickles. I did see this on my chairperson screen. This is the screen that I saw. Certainly interpretation channel selections and, of course, what unit type and button configurations, all hidden within a technical menu. So if you were to make sure you're logged into your 640 and you were to push in on both the volumes on either, wait a minute, wait. I'm in the wrong, never mind. On the, this is a feature of the wireless system. Never mind. The wireless system has a technical mode too, and I think Vanessa already walked you through that. This technical mode feature allows you to log in and change settings as well from within the software and such. There is an interchangeable speak button and function button as well. And again, this kind of gets back to if we want to replace that button with those other buttons that we had already talked about, okay? The 630 and 640 both can be set up in 3 different modes. We've mentioned this: all delegates off, mute all, or next on in the chairman package. The 10 buttons for speak A and speak B. Good grief. And the mute and reply. The buttons are identical for 630 and 640 both. With Software 6000, you can get additional functionality and views. So for instance, you can do a participant login via code or PIN. We talked about that, or chip card. You can get the reply list. You can see the agenda, and of course, you can see messages as well. So if you wanted to send, so for instance, if a technician wanted to send a message to the chairperson or something, and have it pop up on the screen, absolutely, that can be done. So like it's 5 minutes to lunch or time to end the meeting, whatever. The flush-mounted counterpart of the MXC 620 is the 620F. It's designed for single use by either a chairperson or a delegate, and it includes the NFC ID card reader. If you had chance at lunchtime, maybe you saw this stuff. They're installed in nice little wood blocks out there so you can get an idea. Also, this allows us to have language interpretation, selector jack with headphone connector there. The 630 counterpart in flush is the 630F. Pretty straightforward there. It can be used as a chairperson or delegate as well. It includes 5 backlit voting buttons and single interpretation channel selector with 3.5 millimeter jack. And NFC card as well. Those 2 units, excuse me, the next section here is on this modular conference unit, okay? The ones we just looked at, the 620, 630, have all the guts built in, and they can live on their own. But there might be instances where you have like maybe just a microphone at a lectern right here, and you don't want to have a portable thing, you want to flush mount. Again, you can use an MXC MIU, and then here's just a microphone connection point. That's the FS version, and if you need something with a loudspeaker as well, that's the FL version. Note that there's that XLR connector for separate input, maybe for wireless system or for ambient mic or something like that. Before we move on, I want to take a moment and say that we do expect to offer customized solutions. We're not going to customize the guts, but if this plates need to be different sizes or different colors or that type of thing, we do expect to be able to go down that path, mainly because many of these council chambers or places have custom dais, expensive woodworking, millwork, whatever, and you want to replace what's there, and maybe the hole size doesn't quite line up. We expect to be able to help you with that. So bring whatever you have to our technical support guys, and we'll work through those details. So the MXC MIU features and benefits. This includes, like I had mentioned, ambient microphone or an external interpretation channel maybe. That XLR channel, which also has a ground lift switch. Note that currently the change between the use, what are they saying here? Please note that currently the change between the use either with plates or as input source via XLR can only be executed via firmware. Okay, so if you want to access that XLR, you do that through firmware. Okay. Here's our plates. The small plate or the FS version has mute and function speak buttons. It's that 10-pin multi-pin connector. It also has a 3.5 millimeter jack for headphone. And the larger plate, of course, which includes the loudspeaker, has the same type of buttons, including that loudspeaker, yeah. Both plates connect to the MIU via locking HDMI cable. It ships with a 1 meter cable. So we're using an HDMI cable because first of all, we want something off the shelf instead of creating a custom DB something or another thing to connect between these two things. But it's literally, there's analog audio and control stuff that's going between the plate now and the MIU. So we need all the extra pins that HDMI has. We are not subscribing to HDMI certification. This is not for video. This is strictly just use of an existing cable that's easily accessible to connect up these two devices. Does that make sense? Okay.
Is it a standard HDMI cable, or is it a high performance ones?
It's a standard HDMI cable. However, we give you the opportunity to use the locking style.
Yeah.
So you can buy the locking style to lock it in
Okay.
installation.
Is there a distance limit on that cable?
We say it's 15-ish. I mean, standard HDMI.
HDMI protocol.
So I can add my 75-foot HDMI cable.
Where did you buy said HDMI cable?
Oh, it came from one of my integrators.
Oh, well, then, of course. And that's the best you can get.
Yeah.
Yes, in all seriousness, the cabling does matter to a small degree. Don't try to buy the cheapest stuff you can find and then extend it 50 feet, as you wouldn't do with other installs. You buy a nicer cable if you're going to go a long distance.
Here's probably a decent answer for you. As you probably know, a condenser microphone is an unbalanced signal until it hits a preamp. There's no preamp inside this gooseneck. The preamp is in the guts. Same thing here. The preamp is inside the guts there. So, you don't want to take that unbalanced mic level cable more than about 15 feet. Okay?
So the guts are all inside that MXC MIU and nowhere else.
Right. So other audio sources could certainly be just a podium microphone, maybe, if you want to have a presenter there, wireless microphone, an external interpretation channel, or maybe an ambient microphone. You may have noticed a couple times when we're not in this room, I'll turn a microphone on somewhere. And again, that's because the example is we're broadcasting to a private YouTube channel. If we turn all the microphones off, they're going to say we got an audio problem. We don't hear anything. So having an ambient microphone on just to have some noise come through is smart. The interpreters love this because if for some reason they lose the channel that they're listening to interpret, if they still have an ambient source coming in from the room, they at least have a chance to hear something that's going on in the room and try to continue to interpret. So a couple different options for that to get audio inserted in the chain there. The interpretation console, kind of pretty straightforward here. We got the NFC card slot. We've got 2 TRRS connectors for headset and headphones. Frankly, there's even one of these on the underside of the unit that allows you to dress all the cables out the back so you don't have stuff laying around on top of the desk. If you pick that thing up there, you'll notice that the speaker's not on the front of it. It's on the back of it. And you might go, why the heck is that? Well, remember we talked about these things are usually in ISO booths, and there's glass here. That's part of this ISO standard. So we're relying on that glass to actually bounce the sound up off of there if they need to hear acoustically instead of using just headphones. There's that other port on the bottom. It also has Braille and conforms to that ISO 20109 standard. Tone control, bass and treble. This thing is really a cool device. The name sign, 1900 by 460 pixels, dual-sided or independent. So if you haven't been up here yet to notice, both sides, we can write maybe messages on one side to the participant that's this way. And the other side might have their name on it. As mentioned before, it could be tabletop or flush mounted. And can be part of the DCS LAN chain. So you can write to it and set it out portably or make it installed right as part of your chain so that it can be written to live with every meeting as we've already seen. The sign is programmable either via Software 6000 or the web browser. So again, like I mentioned, there are systems actually already out there that have been installed that's just the name sign, and they'll buy the CCU and the name signs. That's it. They don't need Software 6000. It does add extra functionality. Software 6000 allows you to do dual delegate. Okay, Software 6000 will allow you to invert the image. It'll allow you to do a lot of different things. The web GUI is pretty much header text and subtext kind of thing. Come on, there we go. So, for instance, the one on the right-hand side there, first and last name and then subtext. And it writes the same to the front and back through the web GUI. It's very simple, easy to use, allows you to do something without buying extra software. Now the control unit. Remember, as shipped, this controls what product line? I can't hear you. Your mic's not on.
5900 and MXC.
As it ships right out of the box, you can connect it to 5900. What do you need in order to turn it into an MXC system?
A feature
FL
license.
6000.
FL6000, rock on. All right. So that is a direct replacement for the 5900. When loaded with FL6000, that CCU now becomes compatible with 6000 series, the old stuff and the new stuff, both. We'll learn more about this feature license kind of decrypted here in just a little bit here. But note that it's not possible to use 5900 and 6000 units at the same time, right? Meaning not on the same chain, not on the same CCU. It's either one or the other. So one rack unit space, pretty sweet. It's nice and compact because we pulled the power supply out, which is separate. When you go to order it, do not be confused by the price book. Many of you have already been bit by this. There are two part numbers in the price book. One is a DIS CCU. The other one's a DIS CCU US. What do you suppose the difference is? Besides 500 or 600 bucks or however much it is.
One has a power supply.
Bingo. So don't order the cheaper one thinking you're going to get out of the woods with something cheaper because you're going to have to come back and order the damn power supply anyway. So yeah, this one comes with the US power supply if you order the Dash US version. That power supply, by the way, is a 150 watt power supply. Once you plug it into the unit, that takes about 25 watts to power the unit itself, the CCU, and then about 125 watts is left to power all these individual things out here. Okay. There's an RJ45 Ethernet back on. Oh, hey, that's a good point. I'd mentioned on the front panel you can do basic setup stuff here. Things like, do you want to operate in manual mode or automatic mode or Vox mode? All that stuff can be set up quick and easy here. But on the back, there's that RJ45, which allows you to connect up with a computer and pull up the browser interface GUI and do further connections and setup. There's our 4 LAN ports here. In this scenario, we didn't draw it out yet, but this scenario, this is one DCS LAN connection, and it actually loops around, I think, and hits that table. Then we have another run that hits that table, loops around and hits the next table, and then another run that hits the back 2 tables. Kind of spreading it out a little bit. The point is, though, is that power is dynamically distributed across those ports. So we could have put everything on one LAN if we wanted to. It just worked out better for cabling to just have a couple runs. Okay. There's our XLR outputs. These things can be what we call the floor, meaning the audio that's coming out of the units. That's called the floor audio. We can create groups or interpreter channels and feed those things out separately. A lot of times I've used them for press feeds, feeds to other, maybe for conferencing. So you can interface a microphone processor, a conferencing unit called the P300. You'll have great conferencing results with this. And there's a couple line inputs as well. Line input 1 and 2. This could be used, again, another place to put a microphone in or whatever. That's exactly what we're using our input for. There is one input that you can use as an emergency evacuation override. There are many systems that are installed where this is the only sound reinforcement into the room. So you could connect a fire alarm system up to this thing that plays an audio announcement, and then with contact closure, it will mute whatever's going on with the floor audio and all the bus outputs and replay whatever's coming in over that EEM feed. Okay. So we mentioned 250 controllable participants by default, not units, but participants, up to 3,800. There's our licenses for that we talked about. So here's the browser, the GUI interface. It can be operated in 7 different microphone modes, basic voting with cast and tallies available by default, and in addition to FL6000 feature license, 4 additional feature licenses enable all available features. So if you're a rental house, I don't know, maybe you're buying all of them just to make sure your units have that stuff. having talked a few times about feature licenses now, let's have a look at how this thing actually comes together here. For hardware components and standalone systems, these are called feature licenses. They're stored inside the CPU and are perpetual. The counterparts for software are called Software 6000 licenses. We've kind of been down this road. The licenses are grouped per main functionality and sold in pairs, or sold temporarily or perpetual. Okay, so maybe again, if you're a rental house, you only have, I don't know, one show a year or every 2 years that requires certain functionality, you could buy a temporary license. Question.
Can you export and import that perpetual license if it turns out you didn't need it on the box that you thought you did, but you want to use it in a different system?
That would be something you would need to get other folks involved with, because what we're going to learn right now is licenses are tied to a serial number. Software is not necessarily tied to any specific serial numbers, but the feature licenses themselves are. Okay. So we'll focus on the feature licenses at this point and how they get implemented. That feature license is a key in the format of an uploaded XML file, and such as a price list item. So you can buy this, as a single line item thing. So, for example, let's take the FL6000 feature license, which unlocks that CCU for use with MXC and DCS6000 components. Okay, the firmware portion is already coded into the CCU, but locked by default. So the hardware can already potentially do it. It just needs to be unlocked with this firmware license. And let's see, here we go. Here's the current overview of all feature license. We talked about FL6000, participants, yep. And here's what that thing looks like. You can actually, when you order this thing, you're going to get a zip file. You're going to get an email, okay? And in that email, there'll be a zip file. When you unzip it, there'll be a license type and the serial number for which unit for which the license was issued. So if you're buying a CCU that's brand new and you need it to have FL6000 compatibility, you put them on the same PO, and we'll already know the serial number and issue you the right license for that thing. Let's say you already own a CCU and you want to upgrade it to FL6000. We need to know the serial number off that unit in order to give you this key. Okay. So of note here, you can see all this junk and gack, and it tells you when it was created and what it's unlocking and how many interpreter channels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, don't attempt to change anything thinking you might get away with it. It'll actually screw up the whole license itself. It won't be importable because this key here, this Q key, let's see, this right here is critical. It's an encrypted key that is only recognizable by the unit, and somehow all this stuff makes sense and makes up this Q key. So the takeaway here is that you can open up a license and see what it's activating. But there's really no other reason to do this, right? To figure out what's going on. No reason to change anything. Nothing happens here. Yeah. As mentioned with the description of the central unit, we'll now take a relatively high-level view at the proprietary system bus called DCS LAN and the required cables and cabling best practices. Both MXC and Legacy 6000 components share this bus and this communication protocol, as does 5900. So they both use the same RJ45 connector. And that same cable type, DCS LAN and Ethernet, are not identical. neither from the pin connection nor from the actual communication protocol. And this is true with power over Ethernet, whether it's implemented or not. So as you can see from this table, both power and data lines are used differently with DCS and LAN and Ethernet. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of the end users that pick this thing up might first unplug something and expect to plug it in their computer to get internet, right? That wouldn't be too smart. Doesn't usually cause a problem. Just not a good thing. But more on this cable, the connectors of all these cables must be metal. Shielded cable, the connector, everything, and a continued shield through the entire cable is required for proper signal transport. So consequently, you never want to use unshielded twisted pair cables. These have been referred to or are referred to UTP or just UTP. We've got to make sure everything is maintained through the shield. So I had questions at lunch. Why, et cetera, et cetera. Why can't we just use standard off-the-shelf stuff? Again, I think it was mentioned already today, but well over 90% of our service calls are related to the jumper patch cables from unit to unit. And whether you bought them in bulk from somebody and they didn't meet spec, or someone in the field is trying to terminate them, 9 times out of 10, that's the problem. And unfortunately, with one bad patch cable, the problem doesn't stay local to the units that it's attached to. You could wind up with mics firing off willy-nilly here or there or not working over here. And so you're spending most of your time plugging and unplugging, trying to whittle your way all the way down to one stupid patch cable. For that reason, we recommend using these patch cables. No, we don't just like to make more money. We know that if you use these and you got a problem in the field, it's much more likely the case that it's something else and not these patch cables. Okay. These part numbers are EC6000 dot whatever. That's to indicate what length. We have 9 different lengths from 1/2 meter to 50 meters. They are shielded 4-pair FUTP. The conductor gauge is 24 gauge. It is a lockable RJ45 shielded connector, and it meets the TIA, EIA, EIEIO 568B Cat 5 standard. That means it's swept to 350 megahertz. I'm sorry, the graphic is kind of covering that up. I got to fix that. They're individually tested, every single one of them. So if you know sure, we drop test stuff, we do everything. We're not any different with our cables. Everyone has to be tested. So they're individually tested and packaged. If there's longer links needed, like for instance field install wire, use these as your specs. Have your field wire meet this spec, and then use female terminations, which now means you're doing a punch on the back of a block or something instead of trying to crimp the end of a cable, which is apparently much harder to do. Even though we are in the age of network connectivity, still we have problems with that, the male end. Okay? So no matter which cable, Shure manufactured or custom made is used, there are certain guidelines to observe in terms of cable management. I hope you stay away from things like this. Don't over fasten the cable. This kind of destroys its electrical performance. Don't over bend the cable with sharp radiuses. It's kind of hilarious when you show up at some of these installations and they've taken the cable and done like that and then put a tie wrap around it, right, to keep it in place. And maybe they've even crimped these ends. And then you get the service call, things aren't working. The first thing you probably ought to do is rip that cable out and put a new one in, just to make sure that that's not the problem. If you get caught plugging and unplugging, hot swapping otherwise known as, this can be very sensitive. So there's literally little electrical spikes that happen, and becomes micro damage on those pins and connectors. Enough of that stuff, enough of the arcing, you actually damage the pins and connectors. You might, so now the unit has to go back for repair. So that's, at the end of the day, that's kind of why we say, don't hot swap. Just try to avoid it. So historically, with legacy 6000 system, the DCS LAN chain must not be a closed loop. We didn't allow you to do a loop. It just went one way, and then you would terminate it at the far end. This incorporates the risk of cable failure and may impact communication to form the units beyond the point of failure. So in other words, if I had a cable failure here, cut it right in half, we would know that everything on the rest of the chain is now dead. However, oh yeah, there we go. If we use a redundant loop system, this allows us to, in case of a cable failure, the CCU keeps on communication to and from all the units beyond the point of failure by reversing the direction of communication from the second port. So consequently, the system can handle one cable failure along that line. But note that the direction, the direct connection between the CCU port is only possible with firmware 8.4.0 or higher. So pretty much, I think we're shipping on 8.4 now. If you buy something today, it's going to be compatible. Okay. There's that McRib. That's what makes it possible. In other words, you got to put that thing in line in order to have it work. There is now an in and an out port. For those of you familiar with 5900 or with the 6000 series, it was kind of like just a two-port switch, and you plugged into either one of them, and you just kept the chain going. We've put more smarts in these units, so now you can actually, you have an in and an out. It's self-terminating. So this is a good thing as we move forward. Having a real in and out with a daisy chain, it helps us clear localization. In case of the cable failure, we can clear that localization possible. And we don't have to terminate at the end of the chain anymore. It automatically terminates. Okay. Let's take a lunch break. Haha. All right. Having a mixed topology is generally possible, but functionality would be limited due to the standards of DCS LAN. So, for instance, cable loop redundancy works with closed loop with only MXC units, and that's because of those switch ports, remember, that we talked about. There's an in and an out now. That's one of the features you get. Also, use different ports on the CCU to create separate chains for MXC units and DCIS 6000 units. So if you are in a mixed situation, keep the chains local to whatever the series is of that product. Having in common with DCS LAN as the connection for power, communication, and audio, multiple historic 6000 accessories can be used together with MXC conference units. They can be grouped into DCS LAN, power and signal accessories, audio accessories, and microphone accessories, including headphones. So the takeaway here is that any type of installation topology that you need to cover, we can help you with that, whether it's junction boxes, extra inline power inserters, whatever it takes to get a system up and operating. We've got accessories to make that happen. The first group covers the LAN and power. So there is a little power inserter, almost like a PoE type device. It is not PoE, but think of it that way. It comes with a power brick, just like the CCU does, so that can power, again, another whole bunch of units. There's also the redundancy controller. There's a junction box, a repeater, the EX610 extension unit, and also the LAN switcher. So a quick review here of this stuff. The junction box is interesting, where maybe you notice that there's, like just right here, we've got cable coming in and out and a cable coming in and out, so there's this kind of this little mess of cables here. A junction box is interesting because you could put it right under a table. One unit is attached per port. So I could put one junction box under this table and have this unit, this unit, this unit, that unit, all connected with one cable to the junction box. Okay, kind of cleans up your mess a little bit. The repeater, the 6004, literally refreshes the protocol, the data stream. It does subscribe to standard type of networking protocol, so you get about 300 feet and you need to refresh the signal. 300 feet of cable length anyway, you need to refresh the signal. This repeater can do that. It does not add any more power. It simply refreshes the signal protocol. We also have the EX610 extension unit. That's 4 power supplies built into one. You will run into situations where there are maybe 100 or 125 units that could be installed. One that I worked on is in Southern California that is for the University of California higher ed system, and they all get together once a month, and the chancellor or the chancellor and the governor and everybody sit in this large space. Well, they've got a couple of these EX6010s to help power all those units. The DCS LAN switcher kind of came out as a way to provide a backup, so I could switch my LAN to a different CCU if I wanted to, if I had a CCU die. There's that power inverter we talked about. There's our redundancy controller. I think I covered all this already. Yep, junction box. Here's our LAN, signal repeater. Notice there's a couple things to note here. In larger systems where there are 2 ways to chain together multiple repeaters, in this drawing, the CCU is connected to the first repeater using the chain loop through on the repeater. Subsequent repeaters interconnected by further using chain loop through. So in theory, this would allow for an almost unlimited number of interconnection repeaters. The practical limitation comes with the power consumption each repeater takes. So you would have to install, some type of power, an inline power supply. Each of them takes about 10 watts. So each conference unit connected to the 4 split outputs. Additionally, the maximum cable length due to the signal run and processing times limit the size of this cabling structure. So the background regarding signal run and processing times is the following. The communication protocol for DCS LAN allows the central unit to only listen to a response from a unit that has sent a command to within a certain time window. If the total cable length to the last unit and the processing time of the involved hardware components are too long for the response to return in time for the central unit, it will assume that that last unit has been lost. The corresponding maximum cable length to a single conference unit with theoretically no other hardware included is 980 meters. But practically, those repeaters need to be inserted earlier in the cable path to refresh that signal. Cool? The connection scheme is primarily used to obtain many but shorter split chains. That's the practical use here. Here's another use. It's the second way. Again, the CCU is connected to the first repeater in the chain. But now we're using a repeated signal output. Instead of the loop through, we're using the repeated signal output. Subsequent repeaters are now interconnected by using repeated output from the previous chain loop through. The maximum number of repeaters is staggered this way is 3. You can only do this 3 times. And they're typically inserted after 160 meters, which adds up to a total cable length 480 meters. So assuming the last conference unit is connected to the third repeater in line at the maximum distance of 200 meters, we end up with 680 meters in total distance between the central unit and last conference unit. So boiling this down, there we go. It's better to probably just start using EX6010s. This, if you can, you'll use more LAN chains. It's not a cheap thing, but it is what it is. So This thing provides a combination of signal split and refreshes as well as additional power. So unlike the CCU that has 4 LAN ports that share one power supply, this has 4 LAN ports that each have their own power supply, and the signal is refreshed on each output. Okay. Yep, 19-inch rack with fan cooling, loop through, DCS LAN, etc., etc. There's our LAN switcher. In the event that you have customers that really want to go further in redundancy. By the way, when we talk about redundancy, I hope we all realize this is like opening a can of worms. What is it that's redundant? You know, we can have a redundant cabling system. We can have a redundant CCU system. You know, where do we end here? So it can be quite complex. If you have a use for redundancy, just contact us and we'll work out the details about what exactly it needs to be done. My guess is if somebody desires to have redundancy, it's probably just going to be that loop cabling so that it maintains the units are intact. More about the LAN switcher. Audio accessories. So these are some legacy things. We give you the ability to jump in on the DCS LAN with these little switchers, and all it does is allow you to or channel selectors is what they're called, plug in with a set of headphones and just select a certain channel to listen to over headphones. There's also audio output units. So again, this could be tied right into the DCS LAN chain and again dropped for press mult, or maybe you need to get audio feed to another room or another space, maybe powered loudspeakers for a gallery of folks that need to listen but don't need to participate in the meeting itself. There's a 4-channel and an 8-channel version of that. There is an up-close look at those channel selectors. That's the CS6340F. There's a horizontal and vertical. Mostly, again, this comes out of like lots of different options for install. That A6004, which is that 4-channel output, it's another use for it is designed to connect up with like our IR system, for instance, feed an IR distribution system. Those 4 ports mirror the same 4 ports that are the analog outputs on the DCS CCU. That's kind of just outlining that. On the 8-channel, you have a little more configuration. You can kind of configure what you want to come out of those 8 ports. And it's controllable through Software 6000. Again, that is just the 8-channel. Lots of different headphone options. I'll be honest with you guys, when it comes to this, it's not about having the most high fidelity thing. It's about what is the easiest to get on and off your head, what is most hypoallergenic, what can I rub down with an alcohol cloth. That's kind of where it comes to. So they're not super expensive. A lot of guys consider them throwaways, in fact. But that interpreter headset is kind of unique here. This is something newer, and that can be used with 5900 as well as these other units. Yeah. Hope you guys don't mind I'm breezing through this here. Here's our interpreter headset. Yep. So, to learn more about using MXC, there are additional resources. Of course, user guides. There's white paper available on our site that talks about DCS LAN cabling best practices. And I've already mentioned it once, the SAI online courses with the technical enablement and also the sales enablement. It's part of a whole systems portfolio. You may or may not know we offer all kinds of training on all kinds of different things. This is part of that. Let's figure some stuff out
quick,
here.
back on that SAI.
Yeah.
Are there any dealer restrictions that would prevent box sales to an end customer that has their own enablement?
That's kind of a... So while we work for sales, we're not in sales. The short answer is there are requirements placed on dealers in order to purchase certain products. Some of the reps may be able to answer this a little better, but an end user is not going to be able to buy this product off of the internet, even though they went through the training. So the best case scenario is said dealer has been through the enablement, sells the product and supports it, and the end user may also want to go through the training so they know how to use it.
So
Anything's
Sam's
available.
question? Yeah, so Sam's question probably has to do with the fact that they buy a lot of stuff off the GSA contract, right?
Mhm.
So they do a lot of their own designs in-house, and then they'll reach out to the authorized contractors in Georgia who can sell GSA stuff to them. So that was the reason why he was asking the question regarding their enablement that they will do inside Georgia.
Gotcha.
Because they would just expect ADISPL to ship it to them, and they would receive it down at their warehouse. And
Right.
Go out and install it.
Yeah.
You know, just like ADISPL would.
Yeah.
They have certified programmers on staff.
Yeah.
I mean, how big is your team? Probably 8, 10 people. right?
16?
16 people.
Yeah.
Classroom technology.
So I could see how this product could wind up on GSA contract, but someone looking for pricing on our side may or may not be able to get it. They'd probably be calling these guys to help figure it out. That's the best way to do it anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, usually we send out a spec parts list saying we need these components after we've already designed and done all that calculation in-house.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and we're really appreciative of customers like you too that take the time to understand this kind of stuff, because, you know, the old days of just plugging up wires together are long gone. For us on our side, we want to make sure that whoever's selling it can also help support you in the event that you need it. So, speaking of figuring stuff out, this is where you can use those fancy pens and notepads if you wish. I rattled on about a lot of cable equivalents and gear and this and that and the other. The point is, we have to know that there is some amount of draw and cable length issues and requirements when we design these systems. Based on that, let's talk about the equivalent cable length here. Anybody add all this stuff up real quick?
82 meters?
Are we all in agreement?
Yes.
Wait, you're the one who said 82 meters. Are we all in agreement? Yep, I am. Let's take a vote. 82. Are we at 82? All right. Well,
Hey, if I could see the whole screen, it might help.
uh-oh.
Oh, Sam, you already tested about that, man. You got the picture.
Equivalent cable length here. From the CCU, we got the 20 meters there. We got our patches, 16 times 2 of them is 32 meters. And then 3 10-foot, so that's 30 meters. But each MXC 615 is essentially 15 meters of cable use just to get through the system, okay? So the equivalent actually is 367 meters. For those of you reps in the office that have been trying to sell this and you called to figure out how many units you could put on a chain, it's reasons like this that we couldn't just say, oh, it's just 25. You know, you have to calculate the entire thing. Let's take it one step further. Let's add this stuff up. We're looking for the equivalent cable length here. Anybody ready to chime in?
Danny, you're going to have to take your shoes off. So I just want to say one thing. I call on a lot of you guys in this room, and when you have a situation where you guys need to...
Hey, Josh, can you use a mic, please?
you can reach out. Is this thing on? You can reach out to me, and I'll help you guys walk through. These types of configurations, right? It can be a little tricky just trying to figure out how to use the calculator and things like that. So on your first one, just reach out to me. We'll get on Blue Jeans and we'll go through it on video. Not a problem.
So you stole our thunder there. I don't know what number you came up with, but the equivalent is 522. Probably not what you calculated. We got the 615s, which we learned about last time, but that EX6010 is equivalent of 35. Excuse me, it's equivalent of 100 meters just to go through the EX6010. So, wouldn't it be easier if you had something, instead of your fingers and toes to count on, to figure this one out? Email, that's right. He just said it. He laid it out there. We have a DCS land calculator, and basically this allows you to determine the max total cable run from the central control unit, max number of conference units and the cable length, how many supplementary components or repeaters or power inserters are required. So I gave a nod to that a little earlier on. If you want to go there, this is it. You register. I believe we found out the last time, if you go in as a guest, in other words, you don't register, you can create your entire design, but it will not allow you to print out a PDF that tells you what your parts list is. Those sneaky marketing people. If you go here and register, not only will it allow you to name your job and keep track of your jobs and information here, so this is probably good for our reps, but now you would be able to hit print to PDF and it'd give you a parts list of everything that's in that signal chain. Yada, yada, yada. Yeah. What else do we got here? We will tell you if there's a problem or an issue. It starts to light up orange or yellow. Certainly if you got a chain that you're trying to put way too many units on with too much cable run, we're going to tell you where you run into a problem. Okay? Michael, were we going to cover this, or you want to go right into Software 6000?
I think we should take a break and then come back and do some software.
Cool. All right, time to relieve more coffee.
create that.
All right. Software. Fun stuff. So is this weird? Like a guy sitting at a desk all frickin' day during 75,000 PowerPoints. Put that over there. Okay. So it's thanks for hanging in there. There's a lot of information. This is definitely one of the most integrated, intricate product portfolios that Shure deals with because of the parts, the pieces, and as well as it's pretty customizable. When you look at our wireless portfolio, our other MX portfolio pieces, you know, we've tried to boil down the tough parts to get it to a very simplified, easy application. But with this, because folks conduct meetings in a lot of different ways, there's just a lot of different options. There's a lot of different ways to configure it. So it's just, it's been one of those things that's kept us up at night on how to try to be concise about this. And so what Chris just presented to you in about an hour and some change can be done online, or actually in person, in 4 days if you just really want to go deep on this stuff. Is it 2 now? Yeah. Oh, thank you, Jesus. 4 was a wee bit much. So if it's something where you really are doing a lot of deep dive system, you're really focused in on this, we do have other resources as well to help you out. So we're going to dive in to the software side, and we're going to start with the DIS CCU, which should look familiar if you've been in this. So again, for meetings where You don't need voting, agenda management. You don't need a lot of that other intricate parts and pieces. You don't need to export information from it for documentation. This is the interface that you can use with the 640, 620, 630 delegate units here. So again, this is my IP address up here, web browsed directly into the CCU, which is in our rack back here. And on this Systems tab, this is just simply showing us our 4 chains that are out of our CCU. We can see that we've got 9 on the first chain, which is this front row, which I think Chris kind of described that in the DCS LAN calculator, how it was broken out. So this is just reconfirming that our devices are found. We don't have anything lost. And then this also tells us delegate types as well as if we have name signs that are attached to this system as well. Serial number, and then what chain they are on. We can change the order as well if we wish. Talked about feature license 6000, FL6000. This is where you will go in to add that feature license. So again, the feature license is stored inside the unit itself. And you'll notice that we now have a select system tab. If we are a rental house and maybe we have 5900 stock, and we also have 6000 stock, we can quickly toggle here and revert this back to a 5900 system. LAN setup of the device for what we're doing and rinse and repeating, where we put this on a static security, and this is login. So the admin login is to the system setup that we're looking at now. The chairman login is to a microphone control page. So he can control microphones from this. So he doesn't have to go deep diving into the CCU setup. You can actually just put this, say, on a laptop at the front of the table, and he can view this from his angle. He can control his mics for his delegates. If it's in manual mode, we can go down here. So change just to manual, and we can then go out here, say to a request on, which is seat 14. And now we can turn 14 on, which is there next to Chuck. And we can also turn I need to turn myself on. So we'll go back to auto. So that's Chairman's tab. Yeah, so totally lock yourself out. Language, again, it just based on if you are not using English, you can change the browser interface and, of course, factory defaults if we want to blow everything out. Go to meeting controls. So just like what you saw in the Chairman's tab, we can change the speak mode, which Chris went through all of these. Speak interruptibility, we'll show you that on the setup based on your priority if you're a chairman at a 5, or if you're at the lowest level at a 1, if you're a 2. This allows you to interrupt someone. Speak button lock, this has to do with third-party control. If you're in a remote situation like what you saw in the Mimic, where the clerk turned on a mic, but they knew they were supposed to speak, and they go to touch their mic and they turn themselves off because of a little bit of latency. This is just simply involved into a third party. And of course, allow mic off. So if you want somebody to be able to turn their mic on but not actually turn it off, that you have to control that. That's what a lot of these behaviors are. Speak list, we talked about a total of open 8 mics. So we can totally back this down if we would like here. To, again, a total of 8 open and 6 delegates. And what that means is I can have 6 delegates and 2 chairmen. Or if there's 2 chairmen open, then we're going to kill, and we're going to be down to 4 delegates. So this is just simply setting that max speaker number. And, of course, max request, how many in that queue if you're in a manual mode.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Is this the SW6000, or is this just the GUI?
This is the GUI built into the CCU. So you get all of this functionality before we even get to Software 6000. So we've still got this amount of parliamentary control within this room right now if we took that rack out of here. Well, minus the CCU. Replies, it's something where we don't see a lot in the US. It's more of a global piece. So you can actually turn replies on. So you're speaking and you want to reply to what's going on, you can actually turn that left button into a reply, but we only want so many people to be able to be in that reply queue at a time. That's what that relates to. Everybody's favorite mode, Vox detection. Essentially, this is your gate threshold, your release time. Book drop feature is essentially if there's a dynamic, somebody claps or drops something in front of the mic, it doesn't automatically trigger it. Last mic stays open. So again, if you're doing a live meeting, this might be something you want to have so that there's always a live mic feeding ambiently. And automatic off. So automatic off is if I'm not speaking into the mic, after 5 seconds it will shut off. You do have time selectors here. This automatic off is available as well, even if you're not in a Vox mode. So if I'm in an automatic mode like we are now, and I stop speaking, this is a way that it'll automatically shut the mic off as well, so you don't have to worry about maxing out that 8-channel mic, open mic. Audio, loudspeaker control, so we can turn ourselves all the way down, turn ourselves all the way up as well. Input control. So we've got 2 inputs that Chris talked about, input 1, input 2. Input 2 can be used for emergency control. These are simply a quick high-level pad on the devices, and then you've got a little more granular control of the audio. And then this is the assignment. So loudspeaker, of course, if I take this out of loudspeaker, oh wait, I think we're still locked in. This is what's feeding into it. So audio 1 input is what's coming out of the MXC APT, and that's what's routed into that loudspeaker. Device, I got everything there. Oh, sorry, I can go to output control. Just high level, again, you've got those 8 outputs. You've got volume control on those 8 outputs. I can also send these different audios out B, so if I do need a separate output at a different gain stage of, say channel 1 audio, I can simply change all of those out as well. So you've got all these other options as well to control that output. Your group setup is which microphones are grouped together. So if you have the chairman and you have the council and you only want those microphones, not necessarily the audience delegate units, to feed into, say, a gallery feed. So the only folks that in the back that will be able to hear the folks would be, say, the podium mic, because they're facing away from the audience. This is where you can put it in one of those groups and then send that group out to a separate mixer. In this situation, group B, because I'm feeding the MXCW system and the wireless system back into my floor audio, if I selected my floor audio to send back to my wireless unit, we would have a nice feedback loop. So what I want to do is with group B, I'm isolating only the delegate units, their output. I'm not taking this floor audio and sending it back out. So that gives me control of that directly into my MXCW system. And of course, ambient mic, if you have one, you can enable it, and then volume here.
Where does the ambient mic plug in?
Does
it just choose one of them?
It would show up as a device on here in that MXC MIU, where you would plug, say, a microphone into that. That would show up in this, which I don't even think we've got one.
But Michael, isn't it true that we could have a unit be an ambient microphone?
Absolutely.
So
we could.
You didn't want a separate MXC MIU to plug in or whatever. You could just fire one of these things off.
Yeah. So you could technically take one of the 8 if you didn't need it, and you wouldn't want it in the middle of the floor because it would pick up potentially overhear somebody's conversation. So what some of the folks do is you can take it and stick it, like say if you're in a U shape or an oval, you may stick it like in the center of everything so that it still picks up, but nobody's close enough to where they can pick up a sidebar conversation. But yeah, you can absolutely use one of these as an ambient. Obviously lock it on. You wouldn't want the audio off on it.
At that point, are you using that feature right there, that toggle?
The toggle.
The ambient mic toggle?
Not really. It's not. That would be
It's confusing when you call that an ambient mic if it's not using that feature.
a poor man's ambient mic. Participant setup. So this is where we're going to label seat names, participant names to seat numbers within the CCU. Microphone attenuation. So if we do need to turn, if we know seat 11 is a loud talker or he leans into the mic constantly, we've got microphone attenuation adjustment, and we also have speak priority. So if we were to turn him to a 5, he would become a chairman, and then as it trickles down, he would have a higher ranking priority if we have any of that speech priority set up within the system, and then you have all the way down to 0. Everybody defaults to a 1. You do also have loudspeaker attenuation on the device as well. So if we do need to turn the speaker down specifically to one location, we can do that. And this is what we talked about earlier. If we do want to limit the number of replies, we can turn that left button as a mute button or a reply on as well.
Is there local volume control over that loudspeaker?
There is not. You must talk to the master of the system. Here we have name sign setup. So this is the basic setup that we'll have. Spell checker not included. So we will send this to 152. It does take a second the first time you write to it. And you'll notice that we didn't have anything to send to the rest of them, but you'll see that this name sign rewrote itself here. So again, without Software 6000, you can do the name signs directly. And if I need, well, I would unplug it, but we're hooked to the rest of the chain. But at this point, if this needed to be a mobile or a modular system in any type of NPR type room, I can write to these in a separate area and then take my MXCWs or take my MXC, lay them out, and then I can just simply put these in front of my my representatives that are in the room. So I don't have to have these plugged in. I can totally pre-program this ahead of time and then put them out on the table. And let's see, last piece there. Just a touch on interpretation. Again, built in with 4 channels. On the 630, 640, you can use numbers, abbreviations. If you would rather use abbreviations, what are we abbreviating? We would be abbreviating the language that would be interpreted by whatever we might need. Czech, Croatian. Booth setup, that's all based for a separate interpretation if we truly need that. And you've got an auto floor that's just going to default back to floor audio. Not a lot of this. If you do need, if you need help in setting any of this up or better understanding any of this, if anybody's ever done more than 1 or 2 channels of interpretation, this gets really deep into who's listening to who, and if I'm interpreting Spanish to French to Croatian, then how am I listening to that chain? This is what you go to the 2-day course for if you really want to enjoy interpretation. And finally, diagnostics. So this is a report which, if you do call into systems, you're having an issue somewhere, they will always ask you to submit a report of it, and then this is going to give you the basic information of what's going on. They'll be able to diagnose and hopefully help find out what the issue is. Gives you a little bit of data as well on your delegate systems. So you do have the ability to pull a report as necessary. So that is your 3 main tabs that you'll use with the DIS CCU. The features and functionality of it without having to touch Software 6000. So at this point, we'll walk through what we did for the mock meeting today. There's 3 icons here. Once you get the software downloaded, you're going to have a CAA, which is your conference administration application. The CAA is where you're going to load the database with information, with names, with pictures, your mimic, vote timers. All of that data is where you enter it here. Your CUA, excuse me, that's CUI. The CUI is going to be an application that runs in the background. You don't need to know really anything about it other than this is what connects the CCU to the computer, and it coordinates the mimic or the CUA. And so the CUA is what you actually use, where you saw the computer screen up here where we selected the agenda, we started and stopped the meeting. So those are the three main things that you'll see on the computer. So in the example today, which by the way, we had this set up in 2 different languages. So and again, this goes back to scalability. Software 6000 is approaching 30 years old. Most of the installs, from what I've been told, use about, even the biggest installs use about 40% of its capability. DIS was a project company, not a product company. So some of the reason what you're going to see here in the CAA, the layout, the workflow of it may not make 100% sense, is because Georgian Parliament wanted this in 2019, and Croatia wanted this in 1989, and so they simply modified the software to allow them to do that. So it's an amazing software that will allow you to do more than any other software out there, but just remember, you can do what you want. It just may take you a hot minute to get through it. This is your opening screen of your CAA. We're going to go to our meetings. And by opening the meeting tab, some of these you probably recognized inside of the agenda from the Mimic earlier. So we did, today was our day 1 run through. And what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this. We've got a meeting next week, and I just want a fresh recording of the meeting. So we're going to copy this. And it tells me I've got a copy. I'm going to change my name here of day 1 p.m. It's going to give you a start date and a stop date for the meeting. So we actually want this. Maybe we just want to run this for a few days. So we'll run it out a couple days. Because we have name signs, we're going to do a prepared participant seating table. That way we know who is seated, who's expected to show up. You could do what we saw, the NFC, automatic login by code, Chris mentioned as well. Speak mode is manual. We don't want anybody just to open up and chit-chat. 3-button voting. These fields over here is just metadata data tagging. If you want to have something specific to this meeting, that's really what it is. So there's a lot of this stuff that you won't actually touch on too much. So we just simply hit update. And on our seat table, Anthony, who is no longer here, we're going to, let's go here. Yeah, so we'll delete that seat. We'll go in and we're going to add Ben to this there. So we've just added Ben. Anthony's no longer going to be here. Anthony's still up here in our database list, right? So we just need to swap one person. Chairman Council 1 is no longer with us. We know that so-and-so has moved into that position, so we just simply swap the position. We're done there. So we'll update, back out. I was jacking around with the agenda earlier, and you probably noticed this in there. It was not supposed to be in there. Oops. So I just need to take that out. I need to take that out. And we're going to update. Here's some subject titles down here in the descriptions. So you noticed a little bit of description that was underneath each of the agenda items. So this is where you just enter that data. As easy as that. A Word table in a Word document is this up here. So folks ask, hey, how do I import through Word? Through a Word table, you basically create like the tabs and the indents, and we can push an agenda into this as well. So we click Update. I needed to get rid of that. We're going to close that out. And really, that's it that we need to modify for the meeting. So we're going to go out of there. We're going to fire our CUI. Now, the reason why I need to fire my CUI and why I shut it down is that when the CUI starts, the CUI takes over the CCU. So what we saw earlier, when we weren't using Software 6000, I wouldn't have been able to control my CCU because the CUI takes over that. So that's why we shut it down. We're going to go over here. This is my cute little icon. We're going to go to Display. And by simply clicking Show List, this now shows us some data that is talking back and forth, and that's it. So that lets us know that we're connected. So we're going I lost my audio because we fired up the meeting, right? Oh, it's Josh. I was so excited. I thought it was Chris. It's only Josh. All right, let me grab this real quick.
I follow instructions for the best of them too.
Yeah, if I can remember how to.
You just gotta remember the sequence of it. Up, down, left, right, A, B, start. Does anybody get that? Is that what it is? Oh, okay.
So go back to that earlier meeting setup. And let's go here. We're going to go to meetings. And I'm going to go ahead and prepare the meeting. And it does take a hot minute for that to pop on there. Make sure that's right. Hey Josh, on that aux, is number 2 selected?
Yeah, number 2's green.
Number 2's green. We need to go to the aux setting on the presentation.
That's as far as my technical ability. The technical difficulty slide.
Sure, that product's not on your line, right?
I think he was back there futzing with it. So, oh, that's. So what happened was we were accidentally did not shut out of a previous meeting that was still running, which is why my CDA didn't show up. Okay, we're good. Yes, sorry about that. So when I click Prepare Meeting over here, we're not starting the meeting, but we're firing the CDA, right? We need to show an image that says, hey, everybody sit down. We need to start this quickly. So this is all you're doing right now. So the minute that we do start the meeting, which will be now, it'll ask us if we want to, yes. And of course, we do lose the audio, and you'll see that it flashes the name signs. So what we were looking at was presentation meeting. We'll go ahead and stop presentation. We will go to, whoops, there we go, our day 1 PM meeting, where I took out what I needed to. Okay, and here's my meeting screen. So on this meeting screen sign, I've got all this stuff set up, right? And you'll notice this is the same parts pieces that we had in the CCU. We're probably going to have this set up. We're really not going to change any of this during the meeting, but really what I'm more concerned about is going to be my agenda. So I'm going to change my screen to the agenda side. And if I do have to have control of the individuals, then I'm going to want my mimic pulled up if I'm going to be responsible for it. Now, by simply clicking Open Remarks, I come in here, and there's been nothing changed yet on my CDA. So this might be in a hallway where folks may or may not be listening to the audio, but they just want to see where you're at in the meeting. So we simply click Set Subject, and that highlights it and just tells us where we're at. So we go through Set Subject. We're now on Proposal 617. We go through the voting. I've got an option, even though we set 3-button voting, we're going to go ahead and stay with 3-button voting. We start the vote, and of course everybody can touch a touch screen, touch panel. You'll break it. So the clerk was not given voting rights because the clerk is the clerk. So you'll notice the number of units that are in the room. If we were to count the number of votes available, it would be 1 short because the clerk is not given the authority to vote. Chairman says we're done with the vote. We click Stop. Now you'll notice the votes are still displayed here, and they may want to look at this, talk about this for a second, but I need to be ready to go to the next agenda item. So you'll notice that I'll actually go over here, and this keeps rotating on the CDA. So we can hold this on the CDA for a quick second, and then once I click Set Subject, then we'll go back to the next item. So that gives me, as the clerk, a quick minute to get prepared to move to the next step while this is still on the screen as well. You've got some other tabs in here. If we had information filled in like Dudley Do Right, this allows the technician. Yeah, we had a Canadian here last week, so it's good. It's good. Good guy. This will give you a little bit of information. So if you do need to know who is speaking or the name, you can simply put some information in there. Again, if we need to send a message out to one of the screens, we can. We thought it was kind of funny. You've got that capability to do that. And after we go through, we saw them. We've also got microphone as well for speech time, load timers, reset timers, things like that. Chris mentioned, do we need to reset it? Volume control as well for these for the folks. I mean, all this stuff is built in if necessary. But we're finished with the meeting. We've done the vote, and so we simply come back here to stop the meeting. Okay, and our presentation gives us all automatic control of our mics. So we'll go ahead and close the CUA for the time being. Now this is just one CUA that you saw on the screen. Chris can have a CUA, another delegate, another technician, so you may have a clerk and a technician. So the clerk may be dealing with one part of the agenda, but the technician may be making sure that microphones are turned on and off for folks. So he may be watching a totally different part of the meeting while she's conducting the votes and the agenda. So you can have multiple CDAs with multiple layers of control. We'll go back to the CAA. After the meeting, we will go to, there we go there, reports. Meeting log report. So we will go to, let's see what we have here. All right, so we'll go here. We're going to create the report. As they mentioned, for folks that need to have things documented permanently, you cannot change the dates or times when this document is printed. It is absolutely uneditable. If you do have a really long meeting, it could take a hot minute. So it shows who logged into the system, so participants that we knew were in the system. There were a total of 35 seats, but these were the folks that were delegates, counselor, chair, logged in. We knew who they were. Speech time as well. Stop meeting, we did a quick run through the duration of the meeting, date, timestamps of the meeting, 58 seconds. So it gives you all the basic details, the voting information as well. Looks like we didn't vote in that. And there was only one speaker that actually spoke in this last one, even though we had 19 participating participants. So this is the basic report that you get out of this. So, somebody did ask about the Mimic configuration. So this is just simply an image that we loaded in. This is the one that we just set up. This was the original one, so you'll just notice it was a difference of a chairs versus tables that we could put the little blue dots on. But you just add whatever image you'd like into this, and then you'll get a set of dots that show up, and then you just simply edit the dots, drag them around the screen. It's as simple as that. So, and then you select CUA Mimic right here at the top, and that'll be your Mimic going forward for any meeting that you start.
Where are those dots that you could stick on there?
Those will pop up. I don't even know if we have, let's see. So these load in by default in these straight lines. And in that straight line, if I hover, it tells me what seat number it is. So when we go through the CCU, we make sure that our seat numbers are laid out correctly so that I know where my units are. And then once I have all those laid out and labeled, I then come in here, and so in this case, if for some reason we had something swapped, or permanently this person wanted to sit there instead of here, we can just simply change the layout of it. You'll see the rest of them out here. So you just simply drag and drop those onto this window wherever you'd like. We'll save changes, yes. And then I'll select here as the CUA Mimic, close, and we'll go back to the CUAA. We are English. We'll go back to meetings, and we'll go back to run through. Oop. Oh, yeah, sorry.
So you still have control. That's just the difference why you see blue.
The software thing, we could spend 2 solid days going through the whole thing. Is there anything specific that we can try to answer? Questions, concerns?
When you ended the meeting, I noticed that the mic still had the same config, or the delegate still had the same config where it was requesting to speak rather than push to talk, and it's on. Is there like a default meeting that you set once a meeting has ended? Or do you have to be in a meeting in order to activate the mics?
So when if your database setup, if your CCU is set up to a manual mode, so push to talk, but your meeting is an automatic meeting, then once the database takes over the CCU, then it will become that automatic meeting. And then the minute you disconnect that CUI, it's running on its own accord. So technically you could set your CCU up so that when you shut your system down for the night, that if you did not want anybody the ability to turn a microphone on, but still for some reason leave the CCU up, you could technically set that up in a manual mode. So yeah, so as quick and simple as that. We can tweak on a meeting, adjust a meeting, and operate a vote, record the vote, export it out, and move on with our lives. We can get government done. Make America great again or something.
So, Michael, there was discussion earlier about having different user levels within the user application.
Yeah.
Can you show or give some highlights as to how that occurs?
Yes, let me see here. So we've got, so here's our participant table. Oh, by the way, so this table is where we can put images, names, information, etc.
Can you import that database via CIV file, or is that just a manual build?
Mr. Neiman, are you aware of a CIV file import on this database?
I missed the question, sorry.
Import via CIV.
CSV?
Excuse me.
So essentially, because it's
because it is a database, right, you can export it, but you have to view it in Excel. You can make changes and import it back in. But meetings are fine to do that kind of thing with, or maybe different bits and pieces, but generally speaking, we don't recommend you mess too much with the database. So what is the exact, are you trying to import a meeting maybe, or?
No, I have a new unit.
Okay.
Getting it set up.
Yeah.
I know all my seats. I know where everybody sits. I've got
Yeah.
to go to the database.
Yep.
I'm just wondering if can you just import it, or do I have to just manually do it?
Yes, you can import a table of delegates, absolutely. You can import the meeting agenda as a Word table.
Okay.
Yes, you can do that.
Can I synchronize with my HR info system?
Your HR what system?
All of the HR databases. So if I want to synchronize my employee list from PeopleSoft.
Global directory kind of thing.
Yeah. That's a good question.
It kind of depends on that API. If that would be a question.
You know what? I
for
think we do
Copenhagen.
have an interface. I think we do have an interface for that, so that you don't have to redo your database, or, rewrite the same bit of information you already have. I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for that. Well,
It falls into that it depends category.
yeah, we're talking to you after class.
You're staying late. To answer your question about the meeting, there's what's called meeting role, and this is where we set speak priorities. So you've got chairman is 5, and then of course no speak rights is also at the bottom. So this is where you would make those adjustments to the names of the folks. So secretary, delegate, I think it should have, on the secretary, which is kind of like the clerk, right to vote is unselected. Technician, again, same thing. We're not going to give him the ability just to turn his mic on. You don't want technical people talking. And then user rights, again, no right to vote. This is where you would select those meeting roles. So you're going to have a participant table of all the names of people. Then you're going to assign them one of these roles. And then you select what you want that person to do. It's not that you're going to go and assign that directly to the person. You're going to create this profile and assign that profile to that person. Because typically most of your delegates are going to have that. You want every delegate to be the same, and you don't want to have to go into every delegate and select what they have and don't have. So this is where you would make those changes.
And based on which meeting, you can assign different roles to an individual.
Yes. Yeah. So there you go. It is 3:30. And Chris, is there anything else that we would, first off, any other questions? Otherwise, we can open it up to Q&A. Otherwise, we can dismiss for the day. We're going to be around here.
Activity.
Oh, crap, that's right. You're not getting out of here. Sorry, I was being positive. Young Chris is going to walk you through a quick bid spec that should take about 15 minutes or so, and just get you familiar to seeing that in a written form.
You're ready to get out of here, aren't you?
No.
I bet you we've...
This is an easy topic to cover. Even easier to sit through.
Oh, let's see. Let me pull up the right stuff here.
You need that screen up, don't you?
I do.
All right.
Which I can do if you can't get there.
I'll get there.
Okay.
Take it. There it goes.
Ah. Okay. This is a bid spec. Certain items have been blacked out to protect the innocent, so to speak. We like our consultants. The reason for running through this really is just to kind of say, hey, this is a real world example. This is a spec that's living out there, and kind of the requirements of such. So let's see. This is for both the city council and a county board of commissioners, as well as other municipalities that's going to use this space. And it's going to be, the intent is to provide a system that is highly flexible, simple to set up, and minimizes the amount of technical support intervention by support staff. We're focusing on the legislative chambers. This particular job does have multiple rooms involved, but we're going to focus on the legislative chambers here. I've taken the liberty to highlight some important topics. This is the point, guys, where you get that fancy pen and paper out. We're going to take notes, and you're going to plug in some part numbers, and we're going to see how we match up at the end with this, okay? We make sure we get all the right pieces and parts. So first of all, we already know it's designed for ease of use and flexibility. Hey, the consultant called out Sure DIS. That's pretty cool. We like that. So we know it's going to be Sure. But it needs to have an integrated microphone, loudspeaker with mic mute controls, request to speak, and built-in ad hoc voting capabilities. So if you're taking notes, write down what you think that is so far. This approach shall also alleviate the need for ceiling mount speakers over the dais and will permit much better audio clarity by utilizing a compact loudspeaker at each location. Okay? System using feature licenses shall expand for more comprehensive standalone agenda and voting functionality. Should have some bells going off here now, guys. The intent to provide a flexible and expandable conference system shall consist of small desktop microphone stations and speaker stations. System shall be divided into 4 station types. We need chairmans, we need delegates, staff, and lectern. Each location shall include a gooseneck mic and a small format loudspeaker, as well as controls for microphone on, off, and mute. Depending upon the location, the conference system shall include either a touch screen or buttons for both control features and future voting. So what are we talking about so far? What unit is that? 640 with the LCD touchscreen. The LCD-equipped chairman and delegate station shall be capable of being reconfigured based on the user group profile. Managing requests to speak. Each of the lower dais locations a conference system shall include 7 conference stations with buttons for push-to-talk, mute, and integrated LCD display screen voting. Okay. So that's our 640. That's what he's talking about. 20-inch gooseneck, which one's that? The MXC 620. It could be either dual flex or single flex, right? And he doesn't specifically call out cardioid or shotgun or anything here, so we'll just assume that it's the standard off-the-shelf one, which is a cardioid, by the way. Depending on each of these units, blah, 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 configured. Okay, great. There shall also be 8 similar conference stations for the upper dais, equipped with just button controls, since it was determined that none of the upper dais locations require chairman level. So what's important here? What's the takeaway? The non-touch screen, but he's saying this allows the upper dais location to be provided at a more cost-effective delegate-only unit system. Stations shall be capable of voting and card-based identification depending upon council, board, or commission. So which one are we talking about here? 630. So we got 7 of those, 8 of these. What are we missing?
Lectern.
Microphones. We got 8 for the upper dais, but we need microphones for them too, right? So we're going to have to write that in. It looks like it's not here exactly. The clerk staff position at the end of the lower dais shall, there should be 2 integrated conference units with LCD display screens. We're back to the 640, right? But we need to add 2 microphones as well to keep our parts list going. There should be 1 microphone station on the portable lectern. Microphone station will allow for the microphone to be turned on and off remotely. The lectern shall also have a small loudspeaker for audio support from the microphones on the dais as well as presentation sources. What are we talking about there? What could it be?
That thing that says large.
The large, yeah. It could be that, yep. But it is portable, so potentially this could be like a 615 or a 620, right? He calls out a loudspeaker, microphone, we know we need that. So maybe there's some ambiguity here. We don't know yet if this needs to be a portable unit or the MXC MIU FL. EIEIO.
How do we know it's portable?
Well, it says portable lectern here. You see that here? Here we go. It doesn't say the unit's portable, you're right. Just the lectern itself is portable. Okay. The audio system shall include new wireless microphone system. Hey, woohoo! 2 wireless handheld microphones and 2 wireless belt packs associated with head-worn mics, yada, yada, yada. This is for ad hoc presentations or audience response, audience questions. The wireless system shall be Wi-Fi based and shall allow for additional transmitter types to be provided, such as gooseneck desktop units. The transmitter shall utilize rechargeable lithium-ion batteries, and they should also include desktop charging dock. What could that be? By the way, Shure doesn't build a wireless Wi-Fi based system with goosenecks and that type of thing. We have a system that operates in 2.4
GLXD?
GLXD advanced, yeah. But that's not what he's called out.
No.
What else could it be? What operates kind of like Wi-Fi that we make?
MXW?
Bingo, MXW. That operates in 1.9 DECT band. It's not Wi-Fi, but how it operates is similar to how Wi-Fi operates. So we'll get it. All right. We're not going to talk about 70-volt loudspeakers because we don't make those. Blah, 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 blah. Going on. Press area council lounge. Da, 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 da. Nothing really here. Now. The new legislative chamber audio system shall include a new hearing assist system for full ADA compliance. System shall have 2 wall-mounted infrared emitters and 10 portable receivers supplied with ear speakers and telcoil loops. I can tell you right now, we don't need 2 wall-mounted infrared emitters. There's only one. But what is this? We gave a nod to it in our presentation today. We have an IR system, and it actually works really well. That is DIR, digital infrared system. And we can hit all these things, although we don't make telcoil loops. Fortunately, that's just a piece of wire that can be bought from multiple different locations or options, yeah. So, my goodness, this is the slowest scrolling. There we go, okay. What does our parts list look like? What's at the heart of the system?
CCU.
CCU. This is an MXC system, so what do we need on that CCU?
FL6000.
Bingo. We know we need some MXC 640s. How many?
9.
Okay. How many 630s? Microphones to go around, right? How about software 6000?
Yes.
Okay, we got software 6000. Did I mention that he wanted to display stuff? It was in there. Okay, yeah. Yeah. So we know we got software 6000. And he wants to display stuff, so we need the CDA to go with software 6000. Good.
Need voting.
Need voting. Good. So we got voting. And a recorded vote, not just ad hoc voting. He said ad hoc voting and recorded voting, both. Anything else? Are we missing anything else?
Is recorded voting in the CDA?
Recorded voting is part of software 6000.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. You can do ad hoc voting without any software, but it's not recorded. Let's see what the consultant listed for his parts list. There we go. Oh, we didn't talk about MXW, but there it is. All right, we've got a 4-channel access point, couple handhelds, couple body packs, There's an ear set for the body pack, wireless charger. Bingo. Here's our 640s. We've got 9 of them. 630s, 8. 615, he called out. But he also called out the MXC MIFL. So I've not talked with him directly after the spec hit the street. I don't know if this is a CYA or what, because maybe that podium is not figured out. It could be portable or it could be installed. We called that out. We actually noticed both of them. We called out both potential parts. But remember, we also need that MIU down there to make the FL work. So I don't know if we've mentioned that. How about MXC 420s? Those are the mics, so we got 19 of those. Now we get on to the rest of it. CCU, FL6000 we called out. We called out Software 6000. There's a conference administrator application, conference user application. What do we notice about those 3 parts? Software 6000, CAA, and the CUA.
They're all bundled.
Bingo. I don't need to order another CAA or CUA. It already comes with Software 6000. Okay? So if you order it, that's fine. You're just paying for it. You don't need it, maybe. And I don't know how you send software back. That's interesting. CDA, we know we need one of those, so we got that. Great. There's our vote that was called out as well. Now he's added an RP 6004. We don't have a plans view of these chambers to take a stab at knowing what the layout was and how we might arrange cabling and stuff. He knows something obviously that we don't, so he's got that in there. In his case, he's labeled the computer sure only simply to say, we know we need these. We need to run Software 6000. We need to run the CDA. And he's even got another one further down here that is for the CDA app. It was on the next page that I deleted. So hopefully that was helpful, I guess, a quick run through of this to kind of get an idea of what's going on in real time. These kind of projects are happening regularly. And we have, I think we have an opportunity for this to help introduce this type of product to the U.S. Again, like I mentioned earlier, so much of this stuff historically has been the old write down by hand. And listen, some of this stuff is based on the actual city manager or clerk that's been there for 20 or 30 years, and it's like, this is how we do it, and we're not going to change. I get that. But as they do revamps and remodels, I think we certainly have a great opportunity with this new product. I hope for everyone, we have a very mixed audience today. I'm grateful for everyone showing up. I hope this has been helpful for you. Certainly it's good for us to get the product out and get it launched here in the U.S. I think exposure to this product alone is going to really help drive sales, especially if we know that there's lots of places it can live, not just in the UN, but in lots of places around. You do a search in these major metropolitan areas, you do a search and there's probably 20 different municipalities within a 10-mile radius of your house. So there's opportunity out there, including higher ed. Don't want to leave you guys out.
Question for you though.
Yeah.
What's the product availability?
When do you need it?
Can we have it like 3 months ago?
We weren't shipping then, but we're shipping now, fortunately. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts here, guys? I really want to call out these guys at HWP Co. for hosting this, helping us with this, and this cool new facility that they got. Very appreciative to them. And certainly reach out for those of you who are end users or dealers. Reach out to your prospective HWP Co. guys if you need any help with anything. Otherwise, maybe you all know Michael Moore. He's your market dev, kind of your next technical resource that these guys rely on, and you can rely on as well. He's in your area. And you've also got support at shure.com. They got a phone number, and they got an email address, and we got lots of smart guys there. Yeah, sure. You want to sit? You can stand up there. Turn the mic on.
Use the mic.
Use the mic. This is a discussion. Turn the mic on. Push the button.
Sorry, I'm over here. We would like to say thank you to Shure for being so thankful to you guys for coming. So all of you guys that have attended here today, and I apologize, not any of us rep firm brethren, but everyone else is going to receive, courtesy of Shure, thank you very much, Shure, a pair of SE 535 earphones. And this is a big deal. If you look this up online, these are worth about $450. And the audio quality is unbelievable. So we'll hand those out on your way out. And thank you again so much for being here, you guys. Hope this was helpful. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
You taking POs at the door? When you walk by?
Oh, yeah.
Don't do anything. Don't do anything.
Travel up to CBC every day? Well, close enough.
Thanks, man. Absolutely. I mean, great. What do you want? But thank you. This was.
Yes. Absolutely. When are you guys out tonight?
Yeah, we're heading to the airport pretty much right on now.
What is it, even an hour?
For me, it's an hour 40.
And you're going
Fort Lauderdale.
For me, it's about an hour.
Yeah, we're just seeing US-based flights. We just need to be around it for the...
Yeah, the MAX.
We're flying Southwest and they fly 737 exclusively, so we're just kind of uppering.
Yeah.
Rental car. Got shucked off in Orlando.
Thanks.
I got a double pucker going on right now. I was looking at so you got a lot of weather.
Oh,
Cyclone bomb hitting you.
Oh, yeah. It's supposed to be 26 inches. So if I can get into Denver, I'm wondering where I can go after, like, because all the roads in that Cheyenne are closed right now.
So Michael,
Which is
we're gonna hear
unusual
from you again.
Because I've lived in North Carolina where, like, they say there might be snow next week and the town shuts down.
Right.
And there's not even show up. It takes a lot for us to shut anything down. But like everything so hopefully by Friday it'll be.
It's not a problem. We can get over there from here.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Get your snowshoes and some chains.
We've got some team going out there.
Snow skiing, cross country skiing. I can't even.
Yeah, they'll ask.
Okay. Hey, hey. Hey, hey.
Yes.
Hey, hey. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, hey. Hey, hey. Yes, sir. Hey, hey. Hey, hey.